The air inside the alien ship Virex Dawn was cold and clean, filled with the soft hum of machines that never stopped working. Lights glowed blue and white along the walls, and the smell of metal and disinfectant floated in the air. The ship had docked near Earth only a few hours ago, and now a group of new human travelers stood in the medical bay for their first health inspection. Among them was Corporal Mason Reed, a soldier from the United Earth Defense Corps, tall and broad-shouldered, with short brown hair and eyes that carried a quiet kind of humor even in strange situations. He was not nervous. The aliens seemed friendly enough. They spoke through translators that turned their buzzing voices into clear English. They moved carefully with long arms and smooth blue skin that shimmered under the ship's lights. Their medical team wore silver suits that sealed tight around their necks and wrists. To them, safety was everything. Mason stood with his hands behind his back as a scanning beam swept over his body. The machine hummed softly, showing glowing symbols on a hovering screen. The other humans had already passed the check easily. Mason smiled and gave a small nod when the scanner started its second pass. Then something unexpected happened. A sharp alarm cut through the quiet. Red lights began to flash. The aliens shouted words that the translator could barely keep up with. One of them yelled, "Toxic reading! Contamination detected." Another shouted, "Seal the bay!" The sound of metal doors sliding shut filled the room. Mason blinked, confused. "Hey, what's going on?" he asked, lifting his hand slowly. The head medic, a tall alien with 4 eyes and a shaking voice, pointed at him with a scanner wand. "Your blood hazardous composition. Level 5 toxin." The other aliens stepped back, their movements quick and fearful. The lights around Mason changed to red, marking him as a biological threat. 2 guards in heavy armor appeared at the doorway holding containment rifles. Mason frowned and scratched his chin. "Toxin? You mean poison?" "Yes, deadly to most carbon-based life forms," the medic said. "Explain your condition at once." Mason looked down at his hands, then back up with a small grin. "Condition? I don't have one. Unless you mean hangover." The translator paused for a second as if unsure how to process that word. The alien tilted his head. "Hangover?" Mason chuckled. "Yeah, rough night. Had a few drinks before the flight." The translator repeated his words, and the alien's 4 eyes widened. "You consumed the poison willingly?" "Well, yeah," Mason said, shrugging. "We call it whiskey." The room went silent. The aliens looked at one another in disbelief. The head medic pressed a button on his wrist pad, and the scanner displayed a molecular structure on the screen. The machine's voice announced, "Detected substance, ethanol, toxic, corrosive, not suitable for biological intake." Gasps spread through the alien crew. Mason simply leaned against the wall and smiled. "Don't worry. Humans are built tough. We drink this stuff for fun." The medic dropped his tablet in shock. "For fun? It burns through tissue membranes in less than 1 second." Mason laughed softly. "Yeah, that's why we mix it with ice. Cools it down a bit." The aliens stepped even further back, their faces showing both horror and curiosity. Mason could see their thin fingers trembling as they pointed scanners toward him again. He sighed and said, "Look, I'm fine. You can run your tests if you want. I'm not dying anytime soon." "Impossible," the medic whispered. "You are carrying enough ethanol to kill a Virex crew twice over." "Well," Mason said, "maybe your crew just needs better livers." The translator repeated the words in its neutral voice. The alien captain, who had been silent until now, stepped forward slowly. His skin was darker than the others, with silver marks across his face that showed his rank. "Human Mason Reed," he said, voice deep and formal, "you will be placed in quarantine. Until we understand how you survived this madness." Mason raised an eyebrow. "Madness?" "That Saturday night on Earth, Captain." He was escorted into a containment chamber made of transparent walls. Alien scientists gathered outside, whispering and recording data. Through the glass, Mason could see them taking samples of the air he exhaled. He waved at one of them and smiled. The alien jumped and almost dropped his equipment. Inside the sealed chamber, Mason stretched and looked around. "You guys have coffee on this ship?" he asked through the intercom. No one answered. The head medic turned to the captain and said quietly, "If their kind can drink death, what else can they endure?" The captain's eyes narrowed. "Find out," he said. Mason leaned back in the chair provided for him, still wearing a small grin. "You're gonna need a stronger scanner," he muttered to himself. Outside, alarms went silent, but the tension stayed. Every alien in the room stared at the human through the glass, at the creature who could smile while his blood glowed red on their danger sensors. And deep in the ship's records, the Virex Dawn logged a new entry under human biology. Status: unexplainable. Mason sat inside the transparent containment chamber, tapping his fingers on the glass wall. Outside, a crowd of aliens moved like shadows under the cold blue lights. Their four eyes blinked in strange patterns as they whispered to each other, watching him like a wild creature behind a zoo fence. The hum of machines filled the silence, and every few seconds another scanner beam passed over his body, making a faint buzzing sound that annoyed him. He sighed. "You guys planning to keep me here all day?" he asked. No one answered. The translator had been muted. The aliens wore thick gloves and sealed helmets as they worked around him, afraid to breathe the same air. A few of them carried glowing tablets that showed numbers Mason couldn't read. Every time the readings changed, the aliens whispered louder. Through the intercom, a voice finally spoke. It was calm and smooth, but slightly nervous. "Human Mason Reed, we are testing the compound in your system. It is lethal to every species we know. Yet you are alive," Mason smiled. "Told you, Doc. It's just whiskey." The alien voice hesitated. "You named the poison?" "Of course," Mason said. "We name all our poisons. Makes life more fun." Outside the glass, the aliens looked at each other again. One of them muttered something quickly, and the others nodded. A small drone floated into the chamber, holding a thin tube attached to a glowing cylinder. It hovered near Mason's arm. "Please stay still," the voice said. "We will collect a blood sample." "Sure thing," Mason said, rolling up his sleeve. The drone touched his skin and drew a small amount of blood. The moment the red liquid entered the tube, the cylinder flashed bright yellow and a loud alarm filled the room. The aliens jumped back, shouting. Mason flinched but then laughed. "Relax. It's supposed to be that color." One alien scientist wearing a badge labeled Dr. J. Larn stared at the glowing blood sample in horror. "Impossible," he whispered. "Toxicity levels beyond calibration. How is he stable?" Another alien took the sample from the drone and placed it inside a thick container made of silver metal. The scanner on top immediately beeped and flashed a skull symbol. "Confirmed. Biological death compound detected." Mason raised his eyebrows. "You guys are so dramatic. It's not a death compound, it's happy hour material." Dr. J. Larn looked up sharply. "Happy hour?" "Yeah," Mason said. "Back home, people drink it on weekends. Some mix it with fruit juice. We even toast with it when we celebrate something." The aliens went silent again. Even the machine seemed to pause. Finally, Dr. J. Larn spoke. "You mean, you ingest this toxin by choice? For joy?" Mason leaned back in his chair, smiling. "Exactly. It helps people relax, forget bad days, laugh more. You should try it sometime. Though maybe not the strong stuff." Dr. J. Larn stepped closer to the glass, his eyes narrowing. "Our analysis shows that this compound dissolves cellular membranes. It destroys protein bonds. It kills, not us," Mason said proudly. "Humans have a system that handles it. Liver, kidneys, all that. We break it down before it kills us. Well, most of the time." The alien scientist's voice shook. "Most of the time?" "Yeah," Mason said with a grin. "If you drink too much, you throw up, fall asleep, and wake up regretting everything. But that's the price of a good night." The alien stared as if he had just described a war ritual. Dr. J. Larn turned to his assistant. "Record this behavior pattern. Human subject displays humor in presence of lethal readings. Psychological denial or biological superiority unknown." Mason heard that through the speaker and laughed. "Oh, it's superiority, all right. We've been dealing with dangerous stuff since forever. Volcanoes, viruses, war zones, you name it. A drink isn't gonna scare us." The aliens exchanged glances again. The captain, Roar, entered the lab, his silver-marked face reflecting the bright lights. "Report," he ordered. Dr. J. Larn saluted with his upper hands. "Captain, the substance in the human's blood is confirmed as toxic ethanol. Even minimal exposure kills Virex tissue instantly." Captain Roar looked at Mason, studying him quietly. "And yet he laughs." Mason smiled at the captain. "Better than crying, right?" Roar turned to the medic. "Continue the scans. I want to know how this creature processes death and calls it joy." The aliens ran more tests. They sprayed tiny samples of the liquid onto synthetic cells. Instant decay. They tried on plant tissue, it shriveled. They even tested it against armored bacteria from deep space. It cracked open like glass. But Mason, sitting in his chair, showed normal vital signs and even asked for coffee twice. Hours passed. The results made no sense. The reading said fatal, but the human heartbeat said fine. Finally, Dr. Jalarn stepped closer again. Human Mason, can you describe how your kind discovered this? Ethanol? Mason scratched his chin. Honestly? Probably by accident. Someone left fruit juice sitting too long, it turned weird, they drank it anyway, and boom, history was made. The aliens blinked slowly, their translator pausing again as if refusing to believe it. You discovered poison through decay, and then made it tradition? Exactly, Mason said. That's humanity. We take mistakes and make them culture. The captain's voice was low but filled with awe. You are a species that celebrates death and survives it. Mason laughed. Not celebrates death, Captain. Celebrates life. The difference is how you drink it. Dr. Jalarn turned off his tablet, staring at the human through the glass. We will never understand your kind. Maybe, Mason said softly. But that's what makes us interesting. The room fell silent again. Outside the chamber, the aliens looked at each other, realizing that the strange creature before them was more than an experiment. He was proof of something terrifying and amazing. Inside, Mason stretched, yawned, and smiled at his reflection on the glass. Man, he said quietly, they really need a bar on this ship. And somewhere in the lab's records, the system saved a new line of data. Observation. Human tolerance exceeds known limits. Investigation required. The next day, the lights in the medical bay dimmed to a deep blue. The containment door hissed open, and Mason Reed was led out by two tall Virex guards with pale armor that shimmered like glass. They carried energy staves, but Mason noticed how their hands trembled. He wasn't sure if they were scared of him or his blood. Either way, he kept his easy smile. They brought him into a small room, metal walls, one bright light above, and a long silver table in the center. The air felt cold enough to bite. On the far side sat Captain Rohr, silent as a statue, and beside him stood Dr. Jalarn, holding a glowing tablet. Mason sat down calmly, leaning back as if he were in a casual interview. Captain Rohr spoke first, his deep voice echoing off the walls. Human Mason Reed, you have been cooperative. You have also terrified half my crew. I want to understand what you are. Mason grinned. Just a guy who likes a drink now and then, Captain. Rohr tilted his head. You call it a drink. We call it poison. Every test we perform says your body should be dead. Your heart should have stopped hours ago. Well, Mason said with a shrug, humans have a weird relationship with what should kill us. Dr. Jalarn leaned forward. Explain. Mason rested his arms on the table. You see, Doc, where I come from, everything tries to kill you. The weather, the animals, the diseases, even each other sometimes. But instead of running, we adapt. We find ways to live with the danger. Sometimes we even laugh about it. Jalarn tapped something on his tablet. So you build immunity to toxins by exposure. Not just toxins, Mason said. Pain, fear, loss. We can't stop bad things from happening, so we learn to take the hit and keep moving. The captain's eyes narrowed. And the drink? The ethanol? That, Mason said, smiling faintly, is how we remind ourselves we're still alive. It burns, it hurts, it clouds the mind, but it makes us feel human. The room went quiet. Only the low hum of the translator filled the air. Rohr and Jalarn exchanged a look that carried both confusion and wonder. Jalarn broke the silence. Do all humans drink this poison? Mason chuckled. Not all. Some don't like it. Some can't handle it, but most of us know it. It's part of our stories, our songs, our celebrations. We drink at weddings, at funerals, after victories, and after losses. It's ritual, I guess. The alien scientist shook his head. You choose to alter your mind and risk death for emotion? Mason's eyes softened. Yeah, because life's short, Doc. You have to find warmth somewhere. The captain folded his arms. Warmth in danger. That is madness, Mason smirked. Maybe, but it works. That's why we're still here. Rohr leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Your kind has a reputation in the galactic files. Reckless, unpredictable, violent at times. But I begin to think those reports are not warnings. They are confessions of fear. Mason tilted his head. Fear? Yes, Rohr said. Fear of what kind of creature laughs at death. Mason gave a short laugh. We don't laugh at death, Captain. We laugh because it hasn't caught us yet. For a moment, no one spoke. The translator didn't buzz. Even the hum of the lights seemed to fade. Then Gilarn showed a holographic chart above the table. The molecular structure of ethanol floated in the air, its red and blue lines pulsing with warning symbols. This compound breaks down cellular walls, he said. It destroys, yet your cells absorb it, transform it, and continue functioning. Your organs repair the damage faster than the poison acts. Mason looked at the chart and smiled faintly. Guess evolution had a good day when it made us. Evolution cannot explain defiance of death, Gilarn said firmly. You're something else, Mason leaned forward. Maybe, but you want to know a secret, Doc? It's not just about the body. It's the mind. We believe we can survive, so we do. The captain's eyes glowed faintly in the light. Belief is a biological weapon, he said quietly. That is dangerous, Mason nodded. You have no idea. Roar tapped the table and the hologram changed to display dozens of alien species, each one crossed out beside the word fatal. Only human remained highlighted in green. The captain spoke slowly. Your species endures heat that cooks metal. You breathe air thick with toxins. You eat plants that destroy stomach lining in other races. And now we learn you drink lethal chemicals for joy. Mason grinned. When you say it like that, we sound kind of impressive. Gilarn lowered his head slightly. You sound impossible. Maybe impossible is our natural state, Mason said. The captain studied him a long moment. You understand, Mason Reed, that many species will see you as a threat now. A being immune to their fears, Mason shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time someone called us that. Roar stood slowly. I will make a report to the Galactic Council. They must know about this. Gilarn hesitated. Captain, if the Council learns what these humans can survive, they may fear them even more. Roar turned to Mason. And should they fear you? Mason looked him dead in the eye. His tone changed, calm but steady like steel under silk. They should respect us. That's all we ever ask. For a moment, the captain held his gaze. Then he nodded once. Respect earned through fire, poison, and laughter. A strange kind of strength. Mason stood up slowly as the guards approached. The best kind, he said, stretching his shoulders. You'll understand after a drink or two. Roar frowned. That will never happen. Mason chuckled as they led him back to his cell. Never say never, Captain. That's how we humans get started. As the door sealed behind him, the captain stared at the empty chair. In the silence, Gilarn whispered, If they can drink death, what else can they endure? Roar's answer came quiet and thoughtful. Anything they choose. And deep within the ship's log, the Virex Dawn recorded another note. Entry 219. Human resilience. Limitless. Study continues. The laboratory of the Virex Dawn had never been this crowded before. Every scientist, medic, and officer wanted to see the creature that broke every rule of biology. Mason Reed, the human who drank poison for fun, sat behind a reinforced glass wall once again. He looked relaxed, legs stretched, humming a tune only he could understand. Outside, Dr. Gilarn stood at the center of the observation deck, his long blue hands hovering over a floating control screen. Around him, bright holograms flickered, showing Mason's vital signs. Heart rate steady, oxygen level perfect. Toxin index glowing red. Begin simulation 1, the doctor said. A small robot floated into Mason's chamber, carrying a glass vial filled with golden liquid. Mason leaned forward, squinting. That doesn't look like whiskey. The doctor's voice echoed through the intercom. It is not. It is a controlled compound. Equal toxicity level to the substance in your blood. We wish to observe your reaction. Mason chuckled. So you want to see me drink alien poison now? Precisely, Gilarn replied. You may refuse if you fear harm. Mason smiled. Doc, humans don't back away from a challenge. He took the vial, sniffed it, and made a face. Smells worse than tequila, he muttered. Then, before anyone could stop him, he downed it in one gulp. The alien scientists gasped. The monitors screamed warnings. Heart rate spike, cellular stress detected, neural surge. Alarms blared through the lab. But then the readings leveled out. Mason wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and grinned. Tastes like battery acid, but I'm good. The crowd erupted in confusion. One scientist whispered, He should be dead. Another shouted, His cells are repairing faster than they're dying. Gilarn's hands trembled. Record everything. All data, this? This is impossible. Captain Rohr entered the lab, his presence commanding silence. He looked through the glass at Mason, who was now stretching his arms casually as if nothing had happened. Report, Doctor. J-Larn's voice was thin. Captain, his body adapts faster than chemical decay can occur. The human immune response rewrites itself. We are witnessing live cellular evolution. Rohr frowned. Explain. Every species we know collapses under this toxin in seconds. His cells absorb it, analyze it, and restructure. It is as if his body learns the poison and uses it as fuel. Mason smirked and tapped the glass. You could have just asked. I told you we handle our drinks. The captain stared at him. Human Mason Reed, do all your kind possess this ability? Mason shrugged. Pretty much. Some better than others. We call it tolerance. You build it up with time. Rohr turned to his officers. Tolerance? To death? Yeah, Mason said with a grin. Practice makes perfect, the aliens murmured in disbelief. J-Larn replayed the chemical reaction in slow motion. Mason's blood cells pulsed bright red as they consumed the toxic molecules, breaking them down and sending bursts of energy through his system. Instead of weakening, his vitals improved. He's healing from poison, one medic whispered. He's converting it into strength. Mason stretched his neck and laughed. Maybe next time you'll mix it with ice. J-Larn stared at him like he was a living miracle, or a monster. We must test further. Simulation 2. The room darkened. A second vial appeared, this one glowing green. J-Larn hesitated. This is 10 times stronger. Mason grinned wider. Only 10? Come on, Doc, make it interesting. Rohr's voice was sharp. Enough. We will not risk the subject's life. Mason raised an eyebrow. You think I'd risk mine? I know my limits. He grabbed the vial before anyone could object and drank again. The liquid burned down his throat and his skin flushed red for a second before returning to normal. The monitors went wild. Energy spikes, heat waves, and rapid neuron firing. J-Larn shouted. He's stabilizing! He's adapting in real time. Mason exhaled slowly and smiled. Okay, that one had a kick. The entire lab fell silent. Rohr stared in awe. You are a danger to yourself and everyone around you. Maybe, Mason said. But we're also proof that fear can be beaten. Rohr's gaze hardened. Fear? Mason nodded. You call it poison because it kills you. We call it challenge because it teaches us how to live. That's the difference, the alien captain turned to J-Larn. Is it possible that their evolution was shaped by constant threat? J-Larn nodded slowly. It must be. A world full of predators, toxins, and unstable weather. Their species adapted not by avoiding death, but by befriending it. Mason leaned back in his chair. Exactly. You guys hide behind glass and armor. We build bars and call it Friday night. The translator repeated the sentence and the entire room froze, unsure if it was a joke or a warning. J-Larn's voice was quiet. If humans can drink death and laugh, what do they fear? Mason's eyes grew softer. Losing what we care about. Everything else? We can handle. The captain stood silent for a long time. Finally he said, end the experiment. No further risks. We have learned enough. The scientists protested, desperate to keep testing, but the captain raised a hand, ending the argument. He looked at Mason through the glass one more time. You are a paradox, human Reed, a fragile body that refuses to break. Mason smiled faintly. That's humanity for you, Captain. Fragile until you test us, the captain turned away. Release him from medical watch. Let the record show. Humanity's strength lies not in muscle or weapon, but in defiance. As the lights dimmed and the scanners powered down, Mason leaned back in his chair, smirking at the stunned alien crew. Told you fellas, he said softly. It's all about knowing how to handle your drink. And in the data logs of the Virex Dawn, a final note was written. Observation. Human subject demonstrates adaptive biochemistry beyond theoretical limits. Possible evolutionary immunity to fear itself. The laboratory of the Virex Dawn was a maze of glowing instruments and humming energy fields, each corner alive with data streams and flickering blue light. Every alien scientist on board crowded behind the reinforced glass that separated them from one very calm human sitting on a metal bench. Mason Reed looked like he was waiting for a bus rather than a scientific miracle. His jacket was half-zipped, his posture lazy, and his expression carried that easy grin that made the aliens both fascinated and uneasy. Dr. J-Larn stood in the center of the observation deck. His 4 eyes focused on the hovering screen that displayed Mason's vital signs. Every readout pulsed bright red, screaming warnings that should have meant death, but Mason simply yawned and tapped his fingers on his knee. "You sure this machine's working right, Doc?" he asked through the intercom. "It works perfectly," Jalarn replied, his tone clipped and cautious. "It is you who does not." Mason laughed softly. "Story of my life," the other aliens whispered among themselves. They had scanned him 100 times, taken samples, run analyses, and still nothing made sense. The toxin level in his blood was beyond anything survivable. Yet the human heart kept beating with the steady rhythm of something that refused to die. Jalarn raised his long blue hand. "We will now begin controlled testing. Simulation 1. Replication of the toxic compound known as ethanol." A small drone drifted into Mason's chamber, its claws gripping a glass container filled with amber liquid. The lights reflected off the surface, making it glow like captured fire. Mason leaned forward, curious. "That looks about right," he said. "You even got the color right." "This is a synthetic recreation," Jalarn said. 10 milliliters should destroy organic cells within moments. Please refrain from ingesting." Mason smirked. "You really think telling a human not to do something will work?" Before anyone could stop him, he picked up the vial and drank it in one quick motion. The room exploded in alarms. Red lights flared, warning sirens screamed, and half the scientists stumbled back in horror. On the monitors, Mason's vitals spiked. Heart rate doubled, oxygen dipped, and then, impossibly, everything stabilized. The readings flattened back to normal. Mason coughed once, grinned, and said, "Smooth finish. Needs more flavor, though." Jalarn's 4 eyes widened. You live." "Of course," Mason said. "Tastes a bit like jet fuel, but yeah, still alive." The entire observation deck broke into chaos. Data poured across the screens. Enzyme activity surged beyond any known limit. Mason's cells seemed to absorb the toxin, break it down, and convert part of it into energy. One of the younger scientists whispered, "His metabolism rewrites itself. It adapts faster than we can measure." Jalarn's voice trembled with awe. "It is not resistance. It is evolution in motion." Captain Rohr entered the lab, tall and stern, his silver markings glowing under the lights. "Report," he commanded. "Captain," Jalarn said, turning to him, "the human metabolized the compound. No signs of harm. His body treats death as nutrition." Rohr looked at Mason through the glass. "You drink poison as if it were water." Mason shrugged. "Depends on the night." The captain frowned. "Why? Why would any rational species consume something that burns its organs?" Mason smiled faintly. "Because it reminds us that we're alive. Because danger makes the moment taste better." The translator repeated his words, and the aliens went silent. It was a silence that carried the sound of confusion, fear, and maybe a little admiration. Jalarn turned back to his controls. Simulation 2. Compound concentration doubled. "Doc," the captain warned, "you risk killing him." Jalarn shook his head. "Captain, he will not die. He will teach us something about what it means to live." Mason lifted the new vial as the drone delivered it. The liquid shimmered green this time, glowing like liquid lightning. He sniffed it, winced, and said, "This one smells mean." "Please refrain," Jalarn started, but Mason had already taken the shot. The alarm screamed again. The energy shields flickered. Sensors overloaded as Mason's body temperature climbed, then cooled, then normalized. His breathing slowed to a steady rhythm. When the noise finally faded, he wiped his mouth and said, "Now that had a kick." Rohr took a step closer to the glass. "He turns lethal matter into strength. He is a biological contradiction." Jalarn's hands shook as he read the screen. "No, Captain. He is a biological triumph." The other aliens pressed closer to the glass, staring at the human who defied reason. Mason met their gaze and gave a small salute. "Guess your experiment passed the test," Jalarn whispered to himself. His species evolved in chaos. They do not remove the threat. They adapt to it. They turn pain into progress. Rohr folded his arms, deep in thought. No wonder their world is feared. They endure what others escape. Mason leaned forward. "You know, back home we say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Looks like that's literally true." The captain's expression softened slightly. "You are reckless." "Maybe," Mason said, "but being careful never got us to the stars." Jalarn studied the final results. "Captain, I recommend immediate classification update. Human physiology must be redefined. They are not fragile mammals. They are adaptive anomalies. Roar turned away from the glass. End the experiment. Prepare a report for the Galactic Council. The lights dimmed and the alarms faded. Mason leaned back in his chair, stretching. So, he said with a grin, what's next? You guys got snacks? No one answered. Every alien in the room was still staring at the data, struggling to understand the creature who turned poison into proof of life. As the captain walked toward the exit, he spoke quietly to J-Larn. If their kind ever decides that poison is not enough of a challenge, what else might they try? J-Larn looked at Mason one last time. Whatever it is, Captain, they will survive it. And in the logs of the Virex Dawn, another entry appeared. Observation 22T1. Human subject exhibits adaptive reconstruction at a molecular level. Threat level unknown. Curiosity level infinite. The story of the human who drank poison for fun spread faster than any official transmission. Within a single galactic cycle, every fleet, colony, and academy across the outer sectors had heard the same rumor. A carbon-based creature that consumes death and laughs. The aliens of the Virex Dawn could barely believe it themselves, but the data didn't lie. Mason Reed had become a living paradox, and the galaxy couldn't stop talking about him. In the mess hall of the ship, the crew whispered about him like he was a legend come to life. Some called him the Poison Eater. Others referred to him as the Invincible One. Mason didn't mind either name. He was too busy teaching Dr. J-Larn how to play cards. All right, Doc, Mason said with a grin, holding up his hand of cards. If I win this round, you tell the captain to ease up on the curfew. If you win, J-Larn's translator clicked. You will refrain from ingesting further toxins in the laboratory, Mason laughed. Deal. The alien's 4 eyes blinked nervously as they played. Mason, relaxed as ever, kept telling jokes about Earth's weekend parties, describing bars full of loud music, neon lights, and bad decisions. J-Larn listened in silent fascination, trying to imagine a species that willingly gathered in crowds to damage its own liver together. When Mason threw his final card, he grinned. Read it and weep, Doc. Full house. J-Larn sighed, staring at the cards as if they were cursed. You are a creature of endless luck. Not luck, Mason said, leaning back in his chair. Practice. Before J-Larn could respond, the intercom crackled. Captain Roar's voice filled the room. Attention all crew. Incoming transmission from the Galactic Science Council. They are requesting confirmation of our human subject's status. J-Larn stood at once, straightening his uniform. Mason just smiled. Guess I'm famous now. Moments later, Mason was escorted to the communications deck. A massive holographic screen lit up, showing a dozen alien faces, scientists, leaders, and admirals from across the galaxy. Their colors and shapes were wildly different, but their expressions were all the same. Curiosity mixed with disbelief. A tall, crystalline being spoke first. Captain Roar, is it true? The humans survived ingestion of level 8 toxins? Roar nodded. Confirmed, twice. A murmur swept through the council. Another alien with feathers instead of skin leaned forward. And you're certain he is not using mechanical assistance? No devices, J-Larn said. His body adapts naturally. The council members turned their gaze to Mason. He gave a small wave. Hey there, folks. A pause followed, filled with confusion. He greets us, someone whispered. Mason smiled wider. Yeah, we're big on that. Makes things friendlier. The crystalline alien leaned closer to the camera. Tell us, Human Reed, what motivates your species to ingest lethal substances? Mason thought for a second. Well, where I come from, life's hard. So sometimes you take something dangerous just to remind yourself you're tougher than it. The translator echoed his words across the conference. Silence followed again. No one could decide if they were horrified or impressed. Finally, a small alien with glowing yellow eyes said, You mean you risk pain to celebrate survival? Mason nodded. Exactly. We drink to remember we made it through another day. The council erupted in overlapping chatter. Words like unbelievable, irrational, resilient, and unstoppable echoed in a dozen languages. Mason chuckled under his breath. Guess they never met a Scotsman. Captain Roar cleared his throat. Council members, I suggest we update the Human Classification Index. They are not fragile, as once assumed. They are adaptive anomalies, J-Larn added. Their ability to endure would make them excellent field medics, explorers, or survival specialists. Their physiology seems born for extremes. The crystalline leader nodded slowly. Then it is decided. Humans shall be reclassified as Tier 3 resilient life forms, but I advise caution. A race that laughs at death may not stop where others would. The transmission ended. The screen faded, leaving the crew in silence. Mason looked around and said, Tier 3, huh? Sounds fancy. What's Tier 4? Roar gave him a rare smile. Tier 4 is extinction-proof. You are close, Mason chuckled. We're working on it. Later that evening, as the ship drifted through the quiet of deep space, Mason stood on the observation deck alone. Stars stretched endlessly outside the window, each one shining with the cold light of distance. He took a deep breath and smiled softly to himself. They think we're crazy, he said. Maybe they're right. Behind him, Jalarn entered quietly. Captain Roar wishes to know your plans once we reach the next station. Mason turned. Not sure yet. Maybe I'll show them a real drink. Something called tequila. Comes with salt and lime. Jalarn frowned. You intend to introduce another toxin? Mason laughed. Call it cultural exchange. The alien scientist sighed. You are impossible. Maybe, Mason said. But admit it, you like studying us. Jalarn hesitated, then nodded. You represent everything my people fear and admire. Pain and joy intertwined. It makes no sense. That's humanity, Doc, Mason said, looking back out at the stars. We don't make sense, we make stories. The scientist tilted his head. Stories? Yeah, Mason said. About survival. About turning danger into something worth laughing at. It's how we remind ourselves we're still human. The lights dimmed as the ship entered warp. Jalarn watched Mason for a long moment before quietly leaving. Alone again, Mason took a small metal flask from his pocket. The same one that had started all this. He raised it toward the stars and whispered, Here's to the galaxy finally learning who we are. Outside the ship, the stars stretched and blurred as the Virex Dawn jumped to light speed. In its data core, a new entry was logged automatically. Observation 222. Subject Mason Reed. Status active. Reputation universal. Summary: humans, a species that faces death, smiles, and asks for another round.